She, an ambitious lawyer, judged him. He, a humble waiter, concealed his intelligence. Over his mistake, she reprimands him. Later, she encounters him and discovers he was much more than he seemed. Her prejudice crumbles. Love caught her by surprise. Before we begin, leave a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. The click-clack of Veronica Albright's high heels echoed through the marble lobby of the most sought-after commercial building on Wall Street. At 29, she had built an enviable reputation at Grayson & Associates, one of New York City's most prestigious law firms. Her packed schedule was proof of her success. 3 depositions in the morning, a meeting with investors in the afternoon, and a business dinner at Le Bernardin, the area's most refined restaurant. Veronica checked the Rolex on her wrist as she adjusted her Armani blazer. Punctuality was one of her most valued virtues, as was her ability to close multi-million-dollar deals and her knack for keeping her personal life rigorously organized. In the eyes of her colleagues, she was the woman who had it all under control: a meteoric career, an apartment in Tribeca, an imported car, and a social circle that included only people of the same social and professional standing. What few knew was that behind this impeccable facade, Veronica had architected her life like a fortress against disappointment. Relationships were temporary contracts, evaluated for social compatibility and the potential for mutual growth. Romantic love, a fantasy she had left behind along with the naive dreams of adolescence. At 29, her experience with men amounted to strategic encounters with other lawyers, entrepreneurs, and heirs, people who spoke her language of ambition and pragmatism. As Veronica crossed the city toward Le Bernardin, across town in Queens, Alex Ramirez finished ironing his white restaurant uniform. At 30, he had perfected the art of being invisible. During the day, he was the efficient waiter who knew the menu by heart and could balance 4 plates without spilling a drop of sauce. At night, when he returned home to Jackson Heights, he transformed into the responsible older brother for Sophia, 16, and Mateo, 14. Alex studied civil engineering at the City College of New York, CCNY, attending evening classes whenever work allowed. Every dollar earned in tips was carefully divided, part for the rent of the 2-bedroom apartment he shared with his siblings, part for the younger one's education, and part for his own prep course tuition. What was left, when there was anything left, went into a savings account that one day he hoped would be enough to open his own engineering firm. At Le Bernardin, Alex was recognized for his discretion and efficiency. He memorized not only the customers' orders, but also their preferences: who liked their wine colder, who preferred a table near the window, who was allergic to shellfish. It was a job that required humility and patience, especially when serving executives who treated him as part of the furniture, openly discussing multi-million-dollar deals while he cleared the plates. That Thursday in September, Veronica arrived at Le Bernardin 5 minutes before the scheduled time with the partners of a tech company that intended to expand into the United States. She chose the strategic table, from where she could observe the restaurant's flow and have privacy for confidential discussions. Alex was assigned to serve her table. For 2 hours, he served the dishes with his usual precision, anticipating needs without interrupting the conversation. Veronica barely registered his presence, focused on analyzing every clause of the contract that could land the firm one of the biggest clients of the year. To her, Alex was simply part of Le Bernardin's sophisticated scenery, polite, efficient, and completely irrelevant. The meeting was going well. The investors seemed impressed with Veronica's expertise, and she already visualized the bonus she would receive for closing the deal. That's when she decided to show the financial charts saved on her tablet that disaster struck. The touchscreen didn't respond. The battery had died right at the crucial moment of the presentation. Veronica tried to hide her despair as she explained that the data was on the device, but perceived the skepticism growing in the investor's eyes. She urgently needed a charger or access to a computer. "Excuse me," a soft voice interrupted. Alex was beside the table, discreetly holding a charging cable. "I noticed you were having trouble with the tablet. Can I help?" Veronica looked at him in surprise. In years frequenting Le Bernardin, no waiter had ever offered to solve a problem unrelated to table service. She hesitated for a moment, but the urgency of the situation prevailed. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked, handing him the tablet. Alex connected the cable to a nearby outlet, and in a few seconds, the device sprang back to life. But it was what happened next that left Veronica completely taken aback. "Ma'am," he said softly, leaning in discreetly, "I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I realized you're presenting an expansion project. If I may make an observation, I think it would be interesting to mention the changes to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA. It could be a competitive differentiator for you." Veronica froze. The DMCA amendments were recent and technical, something that only lawyers specializing in technology followed closely. How could a waiter know that information? "Thank you," she managed to murmur, still processing what she had just heard. Alex simply smiled politely and walked away, returning to his serving routine as if nothing had happened. Veronica incorporated the suggestion into the presentation, and the investors were impressed with her updated knowledge of digital legislation. When the meeting ended successfully and the contracts were signed, Veronica remained seated, watching Alex serve other tables with the same discretion as always. For the first time in years, her calculating mind was completely confused. The waiter she hadn't even noticed had just saved the biggest deal of her career. In the following days, Veronica found herself thinking about the waiter from Le Bernardin more often than she cared to admit. The suggestion about the DMCA had been the differentiator that closed the deal, earning the firm a $2 million commission. But what intrigued her most wasn't the professional success, but the question she couldn't answer. How did a waiter know digital legislation? She tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had overheard other lawyers discussing the matter, or read something on the internet by chance. People like Alex, she corrected herself mentally, people from that social class, didn't have access to the education needed to understand the nuances of tech law. It was impossible that he really understood what he was talking about. Even so, the following Thursday, Veronica found herself reserving a table at Le Bernardin for a lunch that could have happened at any other restaurant. She told herself it was for the quality of the food and the atmosphere suitable for business meetings. But the truth was, she felt an irritating curiosity about the mysterious waiter. Alex recognized her immediately when she entered the restaurant. During the week, he had wondered if he had done something wrong by interfering in her meeting. Experience had taught him that people of that social level didn't like subordinates offering unsolicited opinions. But something in her discreet despair at that moment had motivated him to help, even risking his job. "Good afternoon, ma'am," he greeted her with his usual professional courtesy, guiding her to the table. "Are you dining alone today?" "Yes, I'm waiting for a client," Veronica lied, flipping through the menu without really reading it. She studied Alex's face discreetly. He was younger than she had imagined, maybe her age. He had striking features and intelligent eyes that contrasted with the subservience required by the profession. "Alex, isn't it?" He seemed surprised that she knew his name. "Yes, ma'am." "May I recommend the salmon? It's the special today. You can call me Veronica," she said, testing how he would react to breaking the formal protocol. "And yes, the salmon sounds good." Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second. At Le Bernardin, the waiters were trained to maintain a respectful distance from the customers, especially the most important ones. But there was something in her voice that suggested more than casual courtesy. "Of course, Miss Veronica," he replied, finding a middle ground. "Something to drink?" "A white wine. Your choice." She closed the menu and looked at him directly. "Last week about that law you mentioned. How did you know about it?" The question Alex feared had arrived. He could feel other customers observing the prolonged conversation, which wasn't well received by management. But there was something in Veronica's genuine curiosity that disarmed him. "I read a lot," he replied simply. "When you work serving business people, you end up learning a few things." "What kind of reading?" she insisted. Alex realized he was entering dangerous territory. If he told her about college, about the law books he borrowed from the university library to better understand the customers' conversations, he would be revealing more about himself than was safe. "Magazines, newspapers, the basics," he said evasively. "Excuse me, I need to attend to other tables." Veronica watched him walk away, frustrated by the vague answer. During lunch, she noticed how Alex moved through the dining room with a natural elegance that didn't match the stereotypical image she had of waiters. He was polite without being servile, efficient, without being invisible. There was a silent dignity in the way he worked that awakened in her an incomprehensible curiosity. When she finished eating, Veronica left a generous tip, much more than social custom required. Alex thanked her with a smile that seemed genuinely touched, not calculating as she expected. On the way out of the restaurant, Veronica bumped into Sarah, her best friend since college, and now a partner at another prestigious firm. "Veronica, what a surprise to see you here in the middle of the afternoon," Sarah said, kissing her cheek. "Important meeting?" "Something like that," Veronica replied, adjusting her purse on her shoulder. "I love the renovation they did here. And the waiters continue to be a feast for the eyes." Sarah lowered her voice, laughing. "Is that dark-haired one new? I've never seen him before." Veronica followed her friend's gaze and saw Alex organizing a nearby table. "I don't know. I don't usually notice those things." "Of course not," Sarah smiled mischievously. "You only have eyes for CEOs and heirs. Speaking of which, Brian Kessler asked about you at the Bar Association event. I think he's interested in more than professional partnerships." Brian's name reminded Veronica of the world to which she belonged. The son of a traditional family of lawyers, Brian represented exactly the type of man her parents expected her to choose. Successful, well-connected, predictable, safe. "Brian is a good professional," she said diplomatically. "And a good catch," Sarah insisted. "Veronica, you're almost 30. You can't keep choosing forever. At some point, you need to settle down with someone suitable." The word suitable echoed in Veronica's mind during the trip back to the office. Suitable. That's how her life had been built. Suitable choices, suitable relationships, a suitable and predictable future. So why had the conversation with a waiter awakened more interest in her than months of dinners with suitable men? 2 weeks passed before fate forced a new encounter. Veronica was leaving a hearing at the courthouse when a torrential downpour typical of the New York summer turned the streets into rivers. Without an umbrella and wearing a light suit that couldn't get wet, she took refuge in the first coffee shop she found. It was a simple establishment, frequented by college students and local workers. Veronica felt completely out of place among the plastic tables and the handwritten menu when a familiar voice surprised her. "Miss Veronica? What are you doing here?" She turned and found Alex sitting at a table in the corner with books scattered around and a laptop open in front of him. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, far from the formal uniform of Le Bernardin. He seemed younger, more approachable, but also more intellectual than she had ever imagined. "I'm hiding from the rain," she admitted, pointing to the storm outside. "And you? Shouldn't you be working?" "It's my day off," Alex explained, quickly closing his laptop. "I use the time to study." Veronica noticed the titles of the books on the table. Differential calculus, strength of materials, business law. Her mental world turned upside down. "You're in college?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. Alex hesitated, knowing that the moment he had tried to avoid had arrived. "Civil engineering. Senior year." The revelation fell on Veronica like a thunderbolt. All her certainties about social class, education, and suitability crumbled in an instant. The waiter she had categorized and filed away in her mind was, in fact, almost an engineer. The rain continued relentlessly outside, and the small coffee shop had become an impromptu refuge for dozens of people. Veronica found herself with no choice but to accept Alex's shy invitation to share the table, as all the others were occupied. "Civil engineering," she repeated, still processing the information. "Senior year, and you work at Le Bernardin to pay for my studies," Alex completed, organizing the books to make room for her. "And help my family. My younger siblings live with me. Your parents." The question came out more direct than Veronica intended. "My mom died when I was 22. My dad—" Alex hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "Let's just say he didn't cope well with the loss. The younger ones became my responsibility." Veronica felt something strange in her chest, a mixture of admiration and guilt that she couldn't name. Here was a man who had taken on unimaginable responsibilities while she worried about bonuses and social status. "It must be difficult to juggle work, studies, and family," she said, surprised by the gentleness in her voice. "It is," Alex admitted, smiling with a sadness she had never noticed before. "But it's worth it. Sofia wants to go to medical school, and Matteo is a genius in math. They deserve to have the opportunities I didn't have at their age." "What opportunities didn't you have?" Veronica found herself genuinely curious about his life, a completely unexplored territory for someone who had always judged people by appearances. Alex studied her for a moment, as if assessing whether he could trust her. "I had a full scholarship to a private school when I was a teenager. I was good at math and science. I wanted to do engineering since I was a kid. But when my mom got sick, I had to work to help with the medicine. I lost the scholarship. And you still managed to get into college. 8 years later, when I finally saved enough money for the prep course. It wasn't easy going back to studying after so long." He lowered his eyes to the calculus book. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd had the chance to graduate at the right age." Veronica was silent, absorbing the story. Alex's life was everything hers wasn't, full of sacrifices, unchosen responsibilities, and postponed dreams. And yet, he showed no bitterness or self-pity. "And you?" Alex asked, changing the focus. "Did you always want to be a lawyer?" The simple question touched on something Veronica had buried a long time ago. "Actually, no," she admitted, surprised by her own honesty. "When I was a child, I wanted to be a teacher. I dreamed of teaching literature. What changed?" Veronica looked out the window, watching the rain begin to subside. "Life, reality. My parents showed me that romantic dreams don't pay bills or guarantee security." "Are your parents lawyers too?" "My father is a retired judge. My mother comes from a traditional New York family." Veronica paused, feeling that she was revealing more than she should. "They always made it clear that I should choose a respectable profession and a suitable husband. Love, according to them, is a luxury that intelligent people can't afford to prioritize. Do you agree with them?" The question caught Veronica off guard. I always thought so. Relationships based on practical compatibility work better than those based solely on feelings." "But have you never been in love?" Veronica's heart raced. There was a question behind the question, a personal curiosity that she didn't expect to hear from Alex. "Once," she said softly, surprised to be telling this to a virtual stranger. "In college. He was different. He came from a simple family, studied on a scholarship, had dreams that my parents considered naive." "What happened?" Veronica felt the familiar pang of pain that always accompanied this memory. "My parents found out. They made sure to show how our worlds were incompatible. He couldn't give me the life I was used to. He didn't have the right connections. He didn't fit into the future they had planned for me." "And you broke up with him?" "I chose security," she admitted, the words coming out with difficulty. "I thought I was being mature, practical, that love would pass, but the consequences of a wrong choice would last forever." Alex watched her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Do you regret it?" The question echoed in the silence between them. Veronica had never allowed herself to think about it directly, always justifying her choice with rational arguments. But sitting there in front of Alex, a man who had sacrificed his own dreams for others, who worked tirelessly to build a better future, who radiated an integrity that she hadn't seen in years, She found herself questioning everything. "I thought I didn't," she said finally. Until recently, the silence that followed was charged with unspoken meanings. Veronica realized that she was looking at Alex in a completely different way from the first time she saw him at Le Bernardin. He was no longer the efficient and invisible waiter, but a complex, intelligent, and deeply human man. The rain stopped, Alex observed, looking out the window. Veronica followed his gaze and saw that the sun was beginning to appear between the clouds. Reality returned like a cold shower. She was sitting in a simple coffee shop, talking about her personal life with a waiter. No, with a civil engineering student who worked as a waiter, but still someone completely outside her world. "I need to go," she said, getting up abruptly and grabbing her purse. "I have a meeting." Alex nodded, but she noticed a shadow of disappointment in his eyes. "Of course. It was good talking to you, Miss Veronica." "Veronica," she corrected automatically. "Just Veronica." He smiled, a smile that made something strange happen in her stomach. Veronica. She left the coffee shop in a hurry, but not before looking back once. Alex had returned to his books, but she could have sworn he was watching her leave too. During the rest of the afternoon, Veronica tried to focus on work, but her mind kept returning to the conversation. For the first time in years, she had felt truly heard, understood by someone who didn't judge her for the choices she made or the life she had built. And that scared her more than any complex lawsuit she had ever faced. 3 weeks had passed since the encounter at the coffee shop, and Veronica had managed to convince herself that intimate conversation meant nothing. She returned to Le Bernardin only once, maintaining a professional distance from Alex, who respected the implicit boundaries and attended to her with his usual formal courtesy. On the Friday of the 3rd week, everything changed. Veronica was in the office late, preparing for the most important presentation of her career. The multinational company Deltec Group had chosen Grayson and Associates to conduct its expansion in the United States, a project that could be worth $50 million in fees. The presentation would take place on Monday for the company's international board, and Veronica would be the lead attorney. It was almost 10 at night when her laptop simply stopped working. The blue screen of death appeared, taking with it 3 months of hard work. Veronica tried everything: reboots, cloud backups that hadn't fully synced, emergency calls to technicians who didn't answer on weekends. In desperation, she called Sarah, who suggested a 24-hour coffee shop near downtown, where tech students often gathered. "Maybe you'll find someone who can help," her friend said. That's how, at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, Veronica found herself in an establishment she would never frequent under normal circumstances. The place was full of young people with laptops, gamers, and late-night students. She felt completely out of place in her designer suit, among people in t-shirts and sneakers. "Miss Veronica?" The familiar voice made her heart race. Alex was sitting at a nearby table, surrounded by engineering books and papers covered in calculations. He looked as surprised as she was. "Alex," she said, her voice filled with involuntary relief. "What are you doing here?" "Studying. The atmosphere here is better for me to concentrate than at home with my siblings." He noticed her tense expression. "Are you okay? You look like something serious happened." Veronica hesitated. Seeking help from Alex would be admitting a vulnerability that went against everything she believed in. But desperation prevailed. "My laptop crashed and took all my work with it. I have a crucial presentation on Monday and..." Her voice faltered. "I lost everything." Alex stood up immediately. "Can I take a look? Do you know about computers?" "Enough. Engineering nowadays requires knowledge of various areas." Veronica handed over the laptop, watching as Alex examined it with a competence that surprised her. His fingers moved across the keyboard confidently, opening programs and checking settings she didn't even know existed. "The hard drive isn't completely corrupted," he said after a few minutes, "but it will need a more complex procedure to recover the data." "Do you have a partial backup somewhere?" "On my office computer, but only up to last week." "And you remember the main points you need to add?" Veronica listed the crucial elements of the presentation, watching Alex jot everything down with an organization that rivaled hers. When he finished, he surprised her. "I can help you rebuild this. I know professional presentation programs and, well, I kind of understand the structure of business projects. How can you understand business projects? My senior thesis is about the economic feasibility of urban infrastructure projects. I had to learn about investment analysis, corporate structures, regulatory frameworks." He shrugged. "It's not that different from what you do." Veronica stared at him, once again having her preconceptions shattered. "You would do that? Help me redo the presentation." "Of course. You indirectly helped me with that law tip. Now it's my turn." The next 6 hours were the most intense Veronica had experienced in years. Alex not only recovered a large part of the corrupted data through specialized software he knew, but also helped restructure the entire presentation. His understanding of financial analysis and legal frameworks was impressive, and his suggestions for improving the flow of the presentation were brilliant. They worked side by side until dawn, sharing coffees and conversations that flowed naturally between technical aspects of the project and personal revelations. Veronica discovered that Alex read voraciously about international economics, that he had intelligent opinions on public policies, and that his engineering projects had a social conscience that touched her deeply. "Why did you choose civil engineering?" she asked at 4 a.m. when they took a break. "I want to build affordable housing that is worthy," he replied without hesitation. "Projects that show that low-income people also deserve beautiful and functional architecture. Engineering can be a tool for social justice." Veronica felt something stir inside her chest. She hadn't heard anyone talk about work with such passion and purpose in years. When they finished, it was already 6 a.m. The presentation was perfect, better than the original version. Alex had transformed dry data into a compelling narrative, created more impactful graphics, and suggested strategies that Veronica hadn't considered. "Alex, I don't know how to thank you," she said, looking at the final result on the laptop. "You don't need to thank me. It was enjoyable working on something like this." They were sitting very close, the intimacy of hours working together, creating a palpable tension. Veronica could feel his subtle scent, see the small scars on his hands from so much work, notice how his eyes shone when he explained something that excited him. "Veronica," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" Since that first time at the restaurant when you asked me about the law, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." Veronica's heart leapt. "Alex, I know we're from different worlds. I know this is impossible, but spending the night working with you, seeing how intelligent and dedicated you are, how you really care about your work." He paused, gathering courage. "I'm falling in love with you." The silence that followed was charged with electricity. Veronica felt all her defenses crumble. Here was a man who had seen her in her most vulnerable form, who had worked all night to save her without asking for anything in return, who spoke of love with a sincerity that she had forgotten existed. "Me too," she whispered, surprising herself. "I shouldn't, but I am too." He leaned towards her and she didn't pull away. The kiss was soft, timid at first, then more intense as she responded. Veronica felt as if she were waking up from a long dream of conveniences and calculations. When they separated, reality began to seep in. It was 6:30 on a Saturday morning, and Veronica was kissing a waiter, a civil engineering student. She mentally corrected, in a 24-hour coffee shop. "What are we doing?" she murmured. "Being honest for the first time," Alex replied, gently holding her face. It was at that moment that Brian Kessler walked into the establishment. Brian, the son of the traditional family of lawyers, the man Sarah had said was interested in her, the suitable match who represented everything her parents expected. He saw her immediately. It was impossible not to, considering how she stood out in that environment. His eyes went from her to Alex, then to the laptops and papers scattered on the table, finally returning to Veronica's flushed face and slightly swollen lips. The expression on his face went from surprise to comprehension, then to something very much like disdain. "Veronica," he said, approaching the table.
How?
"Interesting to find you here." She pulled away from Alex instinctively, the weight of reality crashing down on her like an avalanche. "Brian, I was working." "I see that," he said, looking meaningfully at Alex. "Working on what exactly?" The question carried insinuations that made Veronica blush even more. Alex stood up, extending his hand politely. "Alex Ramirez. I was helping Ms. Veronica with a technical problem." Brian ignored the outstretched hand. "Of course. And you are a friend," Veronica replied quickly, the word sounding false even to her own ears. Brian's smile was icy. "How nice to have such diverse friends." He turned to Veronica. "We need to talk about the Deltek project. I heard you were facing some difficulties." Veronica felt her blood run cold. If Brian knew about problems with the Deltek project, it meant that the information was already circulating in professional circles. And now he had seen her in a compromising situation. "I'm not facing difficulties," she said firmly. "Great, then I'll see you on Monday. I'll be present at the presentation as an observer." His eyes went to Alex once more. "I'm sure it will be enlightening." After Brian left, the silence between Veronica and Alex was heavy. Both knew that something had changed irreversibly. Not just because they had kissed, but because someone from her world had seen them. And from Brian's veiled threats, that discovery would have consequences. The presentation for the Deltek group on Monday was a resounding success. Veronica conducted the meeting with a confidence and competence that impressed even the most skeptical executives. The graphics that Alex had helped create made an immediate impact, and the strategies they had developed together were received with enthusiasm. The contract was closed on the same day. But the professional victory was overshadowed by Brian Kessler's intimidating presence in the room. He had secured a position as an observer, claiming interest in future partnerships, and throughout the presentation, Veronica could feel his eyes on her, calculating, assessing. When the Deltek executives congratulated the firm on the exceptional work, Brian was the first to approach. "Congratulations, Veronica. Truly inspired work," he said, the emphasis on the last word loaded with meaning. "I'd like to have lunch with you tomorrow. There are some things we need to discuss." It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. That night, Veronica received a message from Alex. "Congratulations on the presentation. I saw on the internet that you closed the deal. You're amazing." The simple message made her smile for the first time since the encounter with Brian, but also intensified the knot in her stomach. How could they keep in touch without raising suspicions? In the following days, Veronica and Alex developed a careful system of communication. Chance encounters at breakfast before work, quick conversations when she had lunch at Le Bernardin, discreet messages through an app that Alex suggested was more secure. Each interaction was planned, each moment together stolen from the reality that separated them. What started as a precaution soon became a desperate necessity. Veronica discovered that Alex was not only intellectually stimulating, but also emotionally transformative. He listened to her in a way that no one ever had, challenged her opinions without disrespecting her, and showed a perspective of the world that made her question everything she had always believed in. "Have you ever thought about using your legal knowledge for social causes?" he asked during one of their secret meetings at the coffee shop near the courthouse. "Like what? Affordable housing, labor rights, defending small business owners? There's so much that could be done." Veronica had never seriously considered it. Her work had always been aimed at large corporations and high-net-worth clients. "It doesn't pay well," she said automatically. "Not everything in life needs to pay well to have value," Alex replied softly. "Some things compensate in other ways." The increasing intensity of her feelings scared Veronica. She found herself thinking about Alex during important meetings, inventing excuses to pass by Le Bernardin, checking her cell phone, constantly waiting for his messages. It was exactly the kind of irrational behavior she had always despised in other women. The lunch with Brian the following Tuesday confirmed her worst fears. "You're different," he said, cutting the salmon with surgical precision. "More relaxed, less focused." "I am focused. I just closed the biggest deal in the firm's history." "Yes, with interesting help." Brian took a sip of wine, studying her. "You know, I was curious about your new technical consultant. I did some research on Alex Ramirez. Veronica's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." Civil engineering at CCNY, partial scholarship, works at Le Bernardin for 3 years. Humble family from Jackson Heights, responsible for 2 younger siblings. Brian smiled coldly. "Exceptional academic record, I must admit. Almost as impressive as his dedication to your work." "Brian, I don't understand what you're getting at." "I'm getting at the fact that you're playing with fire, Veronica. Your father is a respected judge. Your family has an impeccable reputation. You're at the peak of your career. And now you're getting involved with a waiter." "He's an engineering student who works as a waiter," Brian retorted. "The distinction matters to you, but it won't matter to your clients, your colleagues, or your family when they find out." Veronica leaned forward, her voice low but firm. "That's none of your business. It becomes my business when it affects our professional community. When one of the most respected lawyers in New York City starts behaving in a questionable manner." Brian paused, letting the words sink in. "Do your parents know?" "There's nothing to know, isn't there?" "Because I received information that you spent an entire night together at that coffee shop, that you were seen kissing, that you've been meeting regularly." Veronica felt the world spin. "Who's giving you this information?" "Let's just say that people concerned about your well-being have noticed changes in your behavior. Frequent departures during working hours, distraction in meetings, a certain luminosity that doesn't suit your usual personality." The realization hit Veronica like a punch. Someone in the office was watching her, reporting her movements. The paranoia began to set in. "What do you want, Brian?" "I want to protect you from a decision that could ruin your career and your reputation. I want you to end this fantasy before it becomes a public scandal. And if I don't end it?" Brian leaned back in his chair, a predatory smile on his face. "Then I will find myself obligated to share my concerns with people who can intervene more effectively. Your father, for example, or the senior partners at the firm. Perhaps even some important clients who value discretion and suitability in their legal representatives." The threat was clear. Brian wasn't just suggesting he would tell about the relationship. He was promising to destroy her professional and family reputation if she didn't obey. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering protection." "There's a difference." Brian finished his wine. "Think about what you're risking, Veronica. A brilliant career, the respect of your family, your social standing, a secure future. Why? For a romance with someone who can never offer you the life you deserve." That night, Veronica received a call from her mother. "Darling, we received an interesting call today. Brian Kessler asked if we could have dinner together this weekend. He said he has something important to discuss about your future." Veronica's stomach plummeted. "Mom, we're very excited, Veronica. Brian is exactly the type of man we always hoped you would choose. Well-educated, from a traditional family, with a solid career. Your father is already talking about introducing him to the club." After hanging up the phone, Veronica sat on the sofa in her luxurious apartment, looking out the window at the city that stretched below. Everything she had worked for, her career, her reputation, the approval of her family, was being used against her. Her cell phone vibrated with a message from Alex. "Can you meet me tomorrow? I need to tell you something." The innocent message made her realize the trap they were caught in. Every meeting was evidence, every message proof, every moment of happiness ammunition that Brian could use against them. For the first time since they met, Veronica fully understood the chasm that separated them. It wasn't just about money or education, it was about power. Brian had the power to destroy her professional life. Her family had the power to reject her. Society had the power to judge her. And Alex? Alex had no power to protect her from any of these consequences. As she typed a careful reply to Alex, Veronica wondered if love could really be strong enough to face forces so much greater than them. And for the first time, she doubted that the answer was positive. The meeting with Alex the next day took place at the same coffee shop where they had gotten to know each other better. He was agitated, different from usual, holding a white envelope in his hands. "Veronica, something happened," he said as soon as she sat down. "Yesterday, after my shift at Le Bernardin, a man approached me. He said he knew about us." Veronica's blood ran cold. "What man?" "He didn't identify himself, but he was well-dressed, looked like a lawyer. He offered me money." Alex extended the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a letter on Brian Kessler's office letterhead. "Mr. Ramirez," Veronica read aloud, "considering your financial situation and family responsibilities, we believe that this amount can help you focus on your studies and a promising future, away from unnecessary complications. We hope for your understanding about the temporary nature of certain associations." "I didn't accept it," Alex said quickly. I tore up the check in front of him. "But Veronica," he said other things. He said that you would never give up your privileged life for someone like me, that you yourself had done this before, abandoned someone of a lower class when the pressure increased." Veronica closed her eyes, feeling the past come back to haunt her. "Alex, is it true? Have you done this before?" The question echoed in the silence between them. Veronica knew this moment would come, but she didn't expect it to be so painful. "Yes," she admitted, "in college. I told you about it, but you didn't say how it ended. You didn't say you chose security instead of him. I was young, Alex. It was different." "Was it?" His eyes shone with a hurt she had never seen. "Because it seems like exactly the same thing is happening now." Before Veronica could answer, her phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice agitated. "Veronica, where are you? You need to come to the office now. Mr. Thompson wants to speak with you urgently." "About what?" "About photos that arrived to him this morning." Veronica's stomach plummeted. "What photos?" "You with the man in compromising situations." Veronica looked at Alex, who had overheard the conversation. "I need to go," she said, standing up. "Veronica, wait. We need to talk about this." "There's no time, Alex. There's no time for anything." She ran out, leaving him alone in the coffee shop with the envelope and the weight of the unspoken words. At the office, the situation was even worse than she had imagined. Mr. Thompson, senior partner and Veronica's mentor for years, was in his office with an expression of disappointment that made her feel like a child being scolded. "Sit down, Veronica," he said, indicating the chair in front of the desk. On the desk were spread photographs. Veronica and Alex kissing at the coffee shop. They talking intimately at Le Bernardin. Alex leaving her building, a photo clearly taken with a telephoto lens. The chronology of their secret relationship was there exposed in humiliating detail. "An anonymous envelope," explained Mr. Thompson, "arrived early this morning with a letter explaining that you were involved with a service employee from one of our business restaurants. Initially, I thought it was defamation from some envious competitor. Mr. Thompson, I can explain. So it's true." His voice carried a disappointment that hurt more than any shouting. "Veronica, you are one of the brightest lawyers I have ever trained. I was considering recommending you for junior partner next year. And now this. My personal life shouldn't interfere with my work. It shouldn't, but it does. Our clients trust us not only for our legal competence, but for our discretion and suitability. How can I put you in front of the Deltec board, knowing that there are photos of you circulating? Those photos were obtained illegally. Someone is stalking me, blackmailing me." Mr. Thompson sighed deeply. "Veronica, it doesn't matter how they were obtained. What matters is that they exist, and that they represent a risk to the firm's reputation. What are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to choose. Your career or this." He gestured vaguely toward the photos. "I can't have a partner associated with scandals, no matter how talented she is." Veronica felt her world crumble. "And if I choose my career?" Then we file these photos away, never speak of this again, and move on. But any indication that the relationship continues, any new evidence, and our professional association ends immediately. That afternoon, while Veronica processed the ultimatum, she received a call from her mother. "Veronica, dear, we need to talk. Urgent. Your father is furious." "About what?" "About the photos that someone sent to him today. Photos of you with a unsuitable young man." Brian's blackmail had expanded. He wasn't just threatening her career. He had attacked her family too. "Come home now," her mother continued. "Your father is considering drastic measures." When Veronica arrived at her parents' house in the Upper East Side, she found a scene that haunted her. Her father, normally restrained, was visibly upset. Her mother was crying discreetly on the sofa. "Veronica," her father said without preamble, "is this true?" The same photos were scattered on the coffee table. The invasion of privacy made her feel naked, exposed, violated. "Dad, 29 years of education, of investment, of building a family reputation, and you throw it all away for a waiter. He's an engineering student. He's a waiter." Her father exploded. "And you are an Albright. We have a position in society, responsibilities, expectations. We can't afford scandals? Since when is loving someone a scandal? Since when that someone is completely unsuitable for our family?" her mother replied, wiping her eyes. "Veronica, you can't be serious about this." "I'm in love with him." The silence that followed was icy. Her father stood up, walking to the window. "Then you've made your choice," he said without turning around. "And we will make ours." "What does that mean?" "It means that if you continue with this, you can no longer count on our support. Financial, social, or familial." Now he turned around, his face a mask of determination. "It means that you will no longer be welcome in this house." The words hit Veronica like physical slaps. "You're kicking me out of the family?" "We're protecting what we've built for generations," her mother replied. "Sometimes love requires difficult sacrifices." Veronica left her parents' house in a state of shock. In the car, she tried to call Alex, but he didn't answer. She tried again. Silence. Finally, she received a message from him. "I received a call from my manager at Le Bernardin. I was fired. They said there were complaints about my inappropriate behavior with clients. I also received a notice from the university about a review of my scholarship for disciplinary reasons. I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore." Veronica read the message 3 times before fully understanding. Brian hadn't just exposed the relationship, he had systematically destroyed Alex's life. Without the job, he wouldn't be able to support his siblings. Without the scholarship, he wouldn't be able to finish college. She drove to Alex's apartment in Jackson Heights, a journey that symbolized the distance between their worlds. She found him at the door of the building carrying a suitcase. "Alex, wait, we can fix this." He looked at her with an expression that mixed love and resentment. "Fix what, Veronica?" "Are you going to abandon your family, your career, your whole life for me? Because that's what it would take. I can try. Trying isn't enough. Your parents made it very clear to me that I will never be accepted. Your career is at risk, and now I've lost everything too, job, studies, future." He paused, his voice breaking. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I should never have dreamed that I could have someone like you." "Don't say that. What we have is real. What we have is impossible." Alex looked her in the eyes one last time. "I love you, Veronica, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone. But I can no longer be the reason why your life is falling apart." He turned and walked towards the taxi that was waiting for him. Veronica stood on the sidewalk, watching the man she loved disappear from her life, taking with him all the possibilities of happiness that she had begun to believe in. That night, alone in her luxurious apartment, Veronica understood that Brian had won completely. He hadn't just separated her from Alex, he had destroyed any chance of them getting back together. Alex had lost everything, and she had lost the only person who made her feel truly alive. The love was lost, and this time it seemed definitely lost. For 2 weeks had passed since Alex had disappeared from her life, and Veronica had become a shadow of herself. She fulfilled her professional obligations mechanically, maintained social appearances when necessary, and pretended that everything was fine. But inside, something had died. It was during a particularly tedious meeting about real estate contracts that the anger finally manifested. Mr. Thompson mentioned casually that Brian Kessler had offered to collaborate on future projects of the firm, considering his demonstrated concern for the firm's reputation. "What concern?" asked Veronica, interrupting the colleague who was presenting. "Brian was very thoughtful in alerting us to situations that could compromise our image," explained Mr. Thompson. "He demonstrated true professional zeal." The word zeal echoed in Veronica's mind like an alarm. Professional zeal or something more personal? For the first time in weeks, she felt her analytical mind awaken. Brian hadn't acted out of professional zeal. He had orchestrated a systematic campaign of destruction. But why? That night, Veronica began her own investigation. As a lawyer, she knew that every blackmail leaves traces, and Brian wasn't as careful as he thought. First, she checked how the photos had been obtained. Analyzing the angles and locations, she realized that someone had been following her for weeks. This required resources, time, and coordination. It wasn't the work of a jealous fluke, it was a planned operation. Then she investigated the attacks against Alex. A call to a contact at Le Bernardin revealed disturbing information. "It was strange," said the maitre d', a discreet man she had known for years. A lawyer appeared with very specific allegations about Alex. He said he had received complaints from important clients about inappropriate behavior, but when I asked for details, he was vague. "Normally we would investigate before firing someone, but he insinuated that there would be legal consequences if we didn't act quickly." "What kind of consequences?" "Lawsuits for harassment, loss of important clientele." Our manager was scared and preferred not to take the risk. Veronica also discovered that the review of Alex's scholarship at CCNY had been initiated by an anonymous complaint about inappropriate behavior and involvement with questionable figures. The complaint was as vague as the allegations at the restaurant, but it had arrived through official channels that gave it automatic credibility. Each discovery fueled Veronica's growing fury. Brian hadn't just exposed the relationship. He had meticulously destroyed Alex's life using lies and manipulation. The most revealing investigation came through Sarah, who inadvertently provided the missing piece of the puzzle. "You know, it's interesting," commented her friend during a lunch. "Brian has been asking a lot about you lately. Since before all this problem, he always showed interest, but in recent weeks he was almost obsessive." "How obsessive?" "Asking about your habits, your favorite places, if you were seeing someone." Sarah paused, realizing Veronica's expression. "Why are you asking this?" "When exactly did he start asking these questions?" "About 2 months ago. Right after the Deltec presentation, actually. He said he was impressed with your work and wanted to get to know you better." 2 months. Exactly when Veronica and Alex had begun to get closer. Brian hadn't discovered the relationship by chance. He was watching her, waiting for an opportunity. The final revelation came from an unexpected source. Rebecca, the firm's oldest secretary, approached Veronica discreetly. "Ms. Veronica, can I speak with you privately?" They met at a nearby coffee shop, where Rebecca revealed information that changed everything. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but Mr. Kessler has been here several times in recent weeks, talking to Mr. Thompson about you. He said he was concerned about changes in your behavior, that perhaps you were being negatively influenced by someone." "He said this before or after the photos?" "Before." "Long before. He planted doubts about you well before he presented any evidence." Rebecca also revealed that Brian had asked specific questions about Veronica's schedule, her lunch hours, her external meetings. He had collected information about her routine for weeks. "There's one more thing," said Rebecca hesitantly. "Yesterday, I overheard Mr. Kessler talking on the phone about eliminating the competition. I thought it was about a case, but now the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. Brian wasn't protecting professional reputation. He was eliminating Alex to have access to Veronica. It was a calculated, cruel, and completely illegal strategy. That night, Veronica began to plan her counter-offensive. As an experienced lawyer, she knew she needed irrefutable evidence and a strategy that exposed Brian publicly, without leaving room for future manipulation. First, she needed allies. She called a private investigator she had used in complex corporate cases. "I need everything on Brian Kessler," she said. "Finances, relationships, professional history, everything. And I want to know if he's done this before. Stalk women, destroy relationships, use blackmail." Then she contacted a lawyer specializing in cyber crimes about the illegally obtained photos. "This is stalking, invasion of privacy, and possibly extortion," said the specialist after analyzing the evidence. "With the right information, we can prosecute criminally." But Veronica knew that the legal process would be long and public, potentially causing more damage to her reputation. She needed something more immediate and definitive. The inspiration came when she discovered that Brian would be present at the annual Bar Association Gala, an event that would bring together the entire legal elite of New York City. A perfect stage to expose his manipulations before the entire professional community. Veronica began to meticulously prepare her strategy. She would collect all the evidence of Brian's conspiracy, document his lies and manipulations, and present them publicly at the event. But first, she needed to find Alex. Through discreet contacts, she discovered that he had returned to his family's home upstate, defeated and without prospects. His siblings had been forced to leave the private school, where they studied on scholarship, another consequence of Brian's campaign that included defamation about the troubled family. Veronica didn't try to contact him directly. First, she needed to destroy Brian and rebuild the bridges that had been burned. Alex shouldn't see her until she could offer not only her love, but also the restitution of everything he had lost because of her. The investigation revealed that Brian had a history. 2 other women had been victims of his manipulations: a co-worker who had refused his advances, and an ex-girlfriend who had tried to end the relationship. In both cases, he had used privileged information and blackmail to control them. "He's a predator," said one of the victims during an anonymous phone conversation. "He uses his position and connections to destroy whoever doesn't submit to his desires. I never managed to prove anything because he's too clever to leave direct evidence, but this time it would be different." Veronica had resources, knowledge, and, most importantly, the motivation needed to expose him completely. On the eve of the gala, she had a complete dossier on Brian's illegal activities, testimonies from his previous victims, photographic evidence of the stalking, phone records, and documents that proved his systematic campaign of destruction. The stage was set. Tomorrow, before all her peers, Veronica would confront Brian Kessler and teach him a lesson about the consequences of underestimating a woman determined to fight for love and justice. The annual Bar Association Gala of New York City was taking place at the Plaza Hotel, transformed for the occasion into the epicenter of the American legal elite. Veronica arrived wearing an elegant black Valentino dress, carrying a discreet briefcase that contained Brian Kessler's future. She circulated through the event with the serenity of a predator studying her prey. Brian was near the main stage, chatting animatedly with Mr. Thompson and other important partners, clearly positioning himself as the ideal future son-in-law of the Albright family. "Veronica, darling." Her mother appeared at her side, radiant. "Brian told us that you finally resolved your disagreements. We're so happy." "Disagreements?" asked Veronica, keeping her voice neutral. "About that unpleasant episode with the unsuitable young man. Brian explained how he helped you see reason." Her mother lowered her voice. "He really cares about your well-being, dear. That's what's expected of a real man." Veronica felt bile rise in her throat, but she just smiled. Yes, Brian was very enlightening. The moment arrived when the president of the Bar Association invited the honorees of the night to speak. Brian had secured a position as one of the speakers, talking about ethics and responsibility in modern law. He took to the stage with the confidence of someone who believed he had completely won. He began his speech talking about the importance of professional integrity, about how lawyers should be moral examples for society. "We live in times where the boundaries between personal and professional life are blurred," he said, looking directly at Veronica in the audience. "But as guardians of justice, we have a duty to maintain high standards in all areas of our lives." That's when Veronica stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her clear voice echoing through the hall. "May I ask a question about professional ethics?" A murmur ran through the audience. Brian hesitated on stage, clearly not expecting an interruption. "Of course, Ms. Albright," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "Mr. Kessler, what is your opinion on lawyers who use illegal investigation, stalking, and blackmail to achieve personal goals?" The silence in the hall became tense. Brian forced a smile. "Obviously, such practices are reprehensible and contrary to all the principles we defend." "Good to know," said Veronica, opening her briefcase. "Because I have here evidence that you did exactly that." The room exploded in murmurs. Mr. Thompson stood up, trying to intervene, but Veronica continued. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man who is talking about ethics ordered that I be followed for weeks, obtained photographs through invasion of privacy, destroyed the job and studies of an innocent man, and used blackmail to manipulate both my career and my family." Brian tried to regain control. "These are unfounded accusations from a woman who has proof," Veronica interrupted, showing a tablet. "Here are the phone records of your calls to Le Bernardin with false accusations. Here are the payments to private investigators. And here," she paused dramatically, "are the testimonies of 2 other women you stalked and blackmailed when they refused your advances." The information hit the audience like a bomb. Brian lost all color in his face. "You can't prove." "I can and I will," declared Veronica. "In fact, I have already delivered copies of all this evidence to the district attorney and the ethics committee of the Bar Association this morning." The president of the Bar Association took to the stage, clearly trying to control the situation that had become a public scandal. But Veronica wasn't finished. "You want to talk about ethical standards? Then let's talk about how a man used his privileged position to systematically destroy someone he considered a threat. Alex Ramirez is a brilliant, hard-working and honest engineering student who supports 2 younger siblings while finishing his education. He never did anything but treat me with respect and kindness. And for that, he was punished, humiliated, and had his life destroyed." She turned to face her parents in the audience. "You want to talk about suitability? Alex is more suitable for me than any man in this room because he loves me for who I am, not for what I represent. He challenges me to be a better person, not a more convenient version of myself." Her voice rose, charged with emotion. "I fell in love with an extraordinary man who taught me that the value of a person isn't measured by their bank account or their address. And if that means that I need to choose between your approval and my happiness, then I choose happiness." Brian tried to leave the stage discreetly, but security guards were already positioning themselves. The evidence that Veronica had presented was criminal, not just ethical. Mr. Thompson approached her as she came down from the stage. "Veronica, this was dramatic. It was necessary," she replied firmly. "And now, if you'll excuse me, I have something more important to do." Veronica left the hotel under the astonished gaze of the entire New York legal elite. Outside, she found the investigator she had hired. "Did you get him?" she asked. "I got him. Alex Ramirez is in Beacon, at his grandmother's house. I drove all night to bring him." He pointed to a nearby car. "He's there, but I don't know if he'll want to talk to you." Veronica walked towards the car, her heart pounding violently. Alex was leaning against the door of the vehicle, wearing a simple shirt and jeans, thinner than she remembered. When he saw her approaching, his expression became cautious. "Veronica, what? Why am I here?" "Because I needed to apologize," she said, stopping a few feet from him. "For everything. For not fighting for you from the beginning. For letting them hurt you. for believing, even if just for a moment, that our worlds were incompatible. I saw the news, he said softly, about Brian, about what happened at the event. Then you know that he was arrested, that the false accusations against you were withdrawn, that your scholarship was reinstated. She took a deep breath. That I got you a paid internship at the engineering company that is developing the Deltec project. Alex looked at her in disbelief. Why, after everything? Because I love you, she said simply. Because you deserve all the opportunities that were stolen from you. And because, she hesitated, vulnerable. Because I hope that you could still forgive me. Veronica, your parents, your career. My parents will get used to it or they won't. My career. Well, I'm going to open my own firm. Maybe do what you suggested. Use my knowledge for social causes. Affordable housing, labor rights. She smiled through tears. You taught me that some things are worth more than money. Alex approached her slowly. Are you sure? Because this time, if you choose this, I can't let you go back. I'm sure, she said, cupping his face. I'm sure that I want to build a life with the man who made me discover who I really am. The kiss was soft at first, then deep and desperate, charged with weeks of separation and pain. When they separated, Alex smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him in a long time. My siblings are going to love you, he said, and you're going to love meeting my criminal defense attorney, she joked. Because Brian is going to need a lot more than social privilege to get rid of those charges. 6 months later, Veronica opened the firm Albright and Ramirez, social advocacy, specializing in labor rights and affordable housing. Alex had graduated with honors in civil engineering and was working on dignified housing projects for underserved communities. Her parents took time to accept Alex, but his dignity and intelligence, combined with the success of the new firm, eventually won over even the most conservative retired judge. The wedding took place at the church in the neighborhood where Alex grew up. A simple ceremony that celebrated not only the union of two people, but the victory of love over prejudice, of courage over convenience, and of authenticity over social suitability. During the party, which mixed the legal elite with the Jackson Heights community, Veronica danced with her husband under the stars, knowing finally that she had found not only love, but also the truest version of herself. And when Alex whispered in her ear that he loved her exactly as she was, brilliant lawyer, strong woman, life partner, Veronica knew that some battles are worth every tear shed to win them.